In this video, I will be giving an in-depth analysis of each team in the 2023 Little League World Series. Stay tuned to the end of the video, where I will give my official 2023 Little League World Series power rankings. Metro will be represented by Smithfield Little League from Smithfield, Rhode Island. Smithfield has a big stud in Connor Curtis. Curtis hit 3 home runs in 4 regionals games and has 8 home runs total on the summer. He also has a mid-70s fastball on the mound. Rhode Island isn't the most talented team, so they are going to need their other guys to step up. This was the case in regionals, as Rhode Island was able to pick up 2 wins behind stellar performances from their number 2 and number 3 pitchers. They are going to need similar performances to do well in Williamsport. Mexico will be represented by Municipal de Tijuana Little League from Tijuana. This team lost their first game of regionals, but went on a run and won their next 7 games. Mexico looked very good in the regional championship. Against a very good ace, they battled, and eventually blew the game open on a grand slam. This team is very good at hitting, and has some good pitching depth. In the final, they started a lefty that had above-average velocity that shut out Villa del Refugio. Southeast will be represented by Nolensville Little League from Nolensville, Tennessee. This is the 3rd straight year that Nolensville, Tennessee has made the Little League World Series. This year's team is the best team that they have had. Last year, Tennessee made the U.S. Championship game, and this year's team has a few returners from that team. This year's team is led by Lucas McCauley, their co-ace and their top hitters. Their other ace is Grayson May, who was their team MVP in regionals. They are very deep in both pitching and hitting. They have a girl on the team named Stella Weaver, who is a stellar pitcher and has some pop. Canada will be represented by North Regina Little League from Regina, Saskatchewan. This team was the host league for Canada tournament and beat the heavily favored British Columbia team to win the region. British Columbia was 23-0 on the summer and outscored opponents 270-14 before the loss, making North Regina's win one of the biggest upsets ever. North Regina has a very dominant lefty ace who shut out British Columbia in pool play. They are a very solid defensive team too. Although, outside of their ace, their pitching is shaky and their hitting isn't as good as the other teams in the tournament. If Canada saves their ace for their second game and doesn't waste their ace against a very good Chinese Taipei team, Canada can win a game or 2 in this year's Little League World Series. Mountain will be represented by Henderson Little League from Henderson, Nevada. Henderson has a big stud in Nolan Gifford. Nolan has a mid-70s fastball and is the team's best hitter. In regionals, Nevada dominated. The bottom of their order looked like the best part of their order, with their 7 and 8 spot hitters doing heavy damage in regionals. With their ace on the mound, Nevada is almost impossible to beat. Nevada was able to hit fast pitching in their regional final, so if their other pitchers can get outs, Nevada will be a strong contender in Williamsport. The Caribbean will be represented by Pabeo Little League from Willemstad, Curaçao. Curaçao won the international championship the past 2 years and is a strong candidate to make it a 3-peat. They have lights-out pitching and great hitting. They have 5 pitchers that throw at least high 60s in terms of velocity. JWL is one of their stars. A very good pitcher who hit 3 home runs in 4 games in regionals. He is probably the best player on the team. They also have 5 or 6 returners from last year's squad that made the Little League World Series final. Dominant is an understatement for this team's performance at the regional tournament. Curaçao will undoubtedly be the favorite to represent the international side in the 2023 Little League World Series championship game. Northwest will be represented by Northeast Seattle Little League from Seattle, Washington. Washington absolutely dominated their regional tournament. It is hard to tell how exactly good that Washington is, because they did not play top-notch talent in regionals. However, this team looked very impressive. They can really hit and put up runs. If they keep hitting in regionals, they could give the traditional powerhouse teams a run for their money. Japan will be represented by Musashi Fuchu Little League from Tokyo. This team lost in the Tokyo tournament to Chofu Little League, but went undefeated in the Japan Regional Tournament, going 4-0. This team looked dominant at times. They have a few upper 60s pitchers that know how to pitch, and typical of Japanese teams, are exceptional on defense. Their offense was on fire in the regional tournament. Although Japan has not had much success in the Little League World Series in the recent past, I expect this team to win games in Williamsport. West will be represented by El Segundo Little League from El Segundo, California. West has one of the best players in the tournament in Louis Lapp. Lapp has a mid-70s fastball on the mound and might be the best overall hitter in the tournament. California is huge. They look like a high school team. They also likely have the best pitching depth in the tournament. California is easily the #1 team on the power rankings. Asia Pacific will be represented by Kaishan Little League from Taoyuan, Chinese Taipei. Chinese Taipei might have the best player in the tournament. Their ace, Chenjun Fan, has a fastball that gets up to 77 miles per hour. That is equivalent to a fastball over 100 miles per hour. If Chinese Taipei is pitching their ace, they are difficult to beat. Although, in their regional final, they lost to South Korea with their ace on the mound. South Korea will not advance to Williamsport because they had multiple ineligible players. Per Little League, 2 players participated in the South Korean national tournament for South Seoul Little League and were then added to the roster of, and participated for, South Seoul Little League in the Asia Pacific Region tournament after their team was eliminated from the South Korean national tournament. Overall, South Korea was the most impressive team I saw on the international side, and since Chinese Taipei played them close, I believe that Chinese Taipei will find success in Williamsport. New England will be represented by Gray New Gloucester Little League from Gray, Maine. This is the first time in over a decade that Maine will make the Little League World Series. They have multiple very dominant pitchers and have a very good top of the order. I project Maine as a middle to upper pack team in the tournament. If they show the ability to put up runs against the top pitchers, they will win games, as their pitching and defense will keep them in a lot of games. Europe-Africa will be represented by South Czech Republic Little League from Brno, Czech Republic. Czech Republic dominated their regional tournament, albeit against poor competition. This team was losing in the last innings of the regional final against the Netherlands, but pulled through in the bottom of the 6th to win on a walk-off single. They are a fundamentally sound team that can hit. Europe-Africa does not have the top-end talent that the other teams have in this tournament. I would be surprised if this team wins more than 1 game in the Little League World Series this year. Great Lakes will be represented by New Albany Little League from New Albany, Ohio. Ohio had to play 5 games and 6 games in regionals and managed to win 4 of these 5 games. They have a big stud in Kevin Klingerman, who hit 2 homers in regionals and got the win in the regional final against Illinois. Ohio is comfortable 1 behind and is one of the better hitting teams I have seen this year. The question with Ohio lies on their pitching outside of Klingerman. If their pitching holds up, they can rattle off a few wins in Williamsport. Cuba will be represented by Bayamo Little League from Bayamo. This year is the first year ever that Cuba will be in the Little League World Series. Cuba went 8-2 in their regional tournament, looking dominant at times in their tournament. In the winner-take-all championship, the game was pretty even until they broke the game open in extra innings. Edgar Torres was the MVP of the final, getting the win in relief and hitting the triple in extra innings to give Cuba extra runs. Cuba is a pretty solid hitting team with decent pitching. I believe Cuba will be a middle-of-the-pack team in the tournament. Cuba could have improved since they last played, as their regional tournament was played back in February. Southwest will be represented by Needville Little League from Needville, Texas. Each game that Needville played in regionals was close, but not too close. This team is exceptional defensively and on the mound, and is very smart with pitch counts. They simply know how to win games. I would not be surprised if they rattle off a couple of wins to start their tournament run. They are led by DJ Jablonski, not the tallest player, but an exceptional pitcher and hitter. Australia will be represented by Hills Little League from Sydney, New South Wales. Hills will advance to Williamsport for the first time since 2017, when they found some success in the Little League World Series. However, I don't expect this year's team to have success in Williamsport. This team makes some errors, doesn't have very impressive pitching, and is mediocre offensively. Zach Martin is their only returner from last year's team that made the Australian final, and has been their leadoff hitter for the past 2 years. They did play their regional tournament in June, so with a bit more practice this team could get good enough to steal a game or two. Overall, I don't have many expectations for Australia in the Little League World Series this year. Midwest will be represented by Fargo Little League from Fargo, North Dakota. This team did not play a game of All-Stars until regionals, but you wouldn't be able to tell by watching them play. This team is very talented 1 through 12 in the batting order. Their bats were on fire in regionals. They put up 55 runs in 5 regionals games. Again, the question with this team is their pitching. Their ace, Cash Martinez, has command issues at times. Outside of the ace, this team doesn't have dominant pitching, but has some effective pitchers. If they can pitch well against the top offenses, they can win some games in the Little League World Series. Panama will be represented by Club Activo 2030 Little League from Veracruz. Panama was a very competitive tournament this year, as a lot of the games were extremely close. In a best-of-3 championship series, Veragua held on to win the decisive Game 3. This team is solid and plays with a lot of heart. They have fundamentally sound defense and pitchers who pound the zone. I see them as a middle-of-the-pack team in the tournament. They know how to win close games, but don't have the dominance or intimidation factor that the other teams have. Mid-Atlantic will be represented by Media Little League from Media, Pennsylvania. Media is led by Austin Crowley, who has 6 home runs on the summer and has a mid-70s fastball. This team struggled mightily against good pitching, which is something to watch out for. Trevor Skoranek hit a walk-off homer to send Pennsylvania to the Little League World Series. Outside of the ace, Pennsylvania has shaky pitching, so they are going to need to hit. If their bats show up in Williamsport, they can make a run. America will be represented by San Francisco Little League from Maracaibo, Venezuela. Latin America impressed me in the regional tournament. They looked virtually impossible to score against, and had a few players that were exceptional hitters. If this team hits in Williamsport, they could win the international championship. Their pitching staff and defense might be the best on the international side. They gave up 4 runs in 6 games in regionals. Now, for the power rankings, I will go from last to first. I updated my power rankings from my individual U.S. and international power rankings. At 20th is Australia. At 19th is Europe-Africa. At 18th is Canada. At 17th is Midwest. At 16th is Metro. At 15th is Mid-Atlantic. At 14th is Cuba. At 13th is Panama. At 12th is Great Lakes. At 11th is New England. At 10th is Northwest. At 9th is Mountain. At 8th is Japan. At 7th is Southwest. At 6th is Mexico. At 5th is Southeast. At 4th is Latin America. At third is Asia Pacific. At second is West. And at number 1 is Caribbean, who is my pick to win the Little League World Series championship. I could realistically see any of the top 8 winning the Little League World Series. If any of these teams don't win the Little League World Series, I would be shocked. Thanks for watching.